financial crisis has hit everyone in the pocketbook, and lawmakers here are busy discussing reform to prevent the next one. Hello and welcome to People First, the EPP Group's monthly programme on issues with immediate impact on people like you. Other topics we are looking at this month include the fight to save the Arctic from our European footprint and the controversy over whether the burqa should be banned. We begin with financial reform and how it can affect you. Prepared by Chris Burns and reporter Catherine O'Loughlin.
The rescue, according to many analysts, came 2 seconds before midnight. The financial crisis sparked by the collapse of the subprime mortgage market and Lehman Brothers in America brought the world's banking system perilously close to a meltdown. Trillions in guarantees and bailouts from governments, indirectly you, the taxpayer, rushed to the rescue. With economies and finances rebounding, the danger now is complacency. Maybe we don't need to fix anything. EPP Group members here say don't fall into that trap.
Ein Mangel an Stabilität.
A lack of stability can be very, very costly, as we saw in recent years since the Lehman bankruptcy. The costs of the crisis are higher than the costs of restoring the system.
That's why officials have now agreed on the so-called Basel III requirements, strengthening the international banking accord. To face future turbulence, banks will now have to hold a minimum of 4.5% of so-called Tier 1 capital, or core reserves, and by January 2015, a further 2.5%, totalling 7%. But what's the cost to the consumer? MEPs are concerned that larger reserve requirements will mean fewer loans.
The question for consumers is, you shouldn't hinder the possibilities for banks to lend.
What's more, if banks have to park more idle cash for those reserve requirements, the cost of lending will go up.
There's the risk, a rise in the interest rate, but also the risk of rarefied loans. That means banks will put tougher conditions for granting loans or will reduce the volume of available loans.
So EPP lawmakers are discussing how to carry out those Basel III principles carefully.
That's why we want to study the impact before we make a decision. But stability also has its merits for the economy and for the customers.
Not an easy balance to strike, ensuring against the next crisis, but not on the backs of the consumers.
Joining us to talk about the issues is Corrine Wortmann-Kool, EPP Group Vice President and Chairwoman of the Working Group on Economy and Environment. Mrs. Wortmann-Kool, welcome to the programme. How concerned are you that the consumers may end up footing the bill for the banking reform?
Well, the banking reform is in the interest both of the consumer and of our small and medium-sized companies, because they are both dependent for their savings on the bank and also for loans to get. And healthy SMEs means that we can provide our citizens with decent jobs. So it is in the interest of the consumer, but of course it is very important that the new regulation is proportionate, because we do need capital requirements in order to have a stable system.
And this is an issue that the EPP will continue to follow very closely. Let's take a look now at our next report, where Chris Burns shows us how the Arctic is on the front line in the battle over global warming.
The evidence is undeniable and documented. The Arctic is heating up. The impact is visible. No one knows for sure how much. How to stop it remains open to debate. At an EPP Group organized meeting, the director of the European Environment Agency discusses her efforts and her travels to the Arctic to persuade people of power to act.
What I've observed over the years, taking industrial leaders and others actually right to the edge of the ice crumbling below them, is how the whole world, their world, actually falls ahead. And they actually see that what they're doing is impacting on a planetary scale. We've made a film about it, 1 degree matters.
With business as usual, the world temperature on average will rise 6 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. In the Arctic, it could be as much as 12 degrees.
McGlade says Europeans must be made more aware of their impact on that region.
Europe has actually a large footprint in the Arctic through the things we consume, whether it's telephones, televisions, even the fish we eat, in potential terms, will come more and more from places like the Arctic. So we leave a footprint and we create a footprint by our very behaviour here inside Europe.
EPP Group lawmaker Michael Gala heads a report on the Arctic with proposals on how to preserve the region and still develop it.
It's about high environmental standards, it's about our scientific capacity, our research programs, and through this networking with all stakeholders up north, I think we can achieve all objectives that I have outlined: environmental protection, combat climate change, have sustainable exploitation of resources, and give the people up north a perspective for their personal future.
Objectives that take into consideration this.
Humans will face huge challenges living on a planet that lies outside a technology regime which has been tuned to the 1 degree period of the last 10,000 years.
It's a challenge Gala takes especially seriously, having been to the region as well.
This unique impression of an untouched landscape, it makes you aware of the responsibility that we have to preserve this unique nature. That is the most impressive thing that one can feel.
Mrs. Wortmann-Kool, what do you think Europe's lawmakers and its citizens can do to help save the Arctic?
Well, fighting climate change is in the heart of our EPP policies, because we do want a sustainable future for our children and future generations. So it's a very important topic for us. And therefore we have to work on this topic on an international level. But then Europe has to speak with one voice, and we are pushing this very much from the European Parliament on. But second, we need a regulatory framework in the European Union with the right incentives to give incentives to energy efficiency, to invest in sustainable technologies, and also to challenge our citizens that they turn towards renewable energy, towards green technology as well.
Now let's turn to another ongoing debate, the Islamic women's clothing, the burqa. Stephen Jones tells us that story.
A symbol of religious freedom or oppression, an educational impediment, a source of concern for security officials, or a fundamental right of free expression. Here in the European Parliament, the EPP Group's Justice and Home Affairs lawmakers are seeking a better understanding of the complex issues involved.
I think this is an issue which is very particular because it touches upon different aspects. You have human rights aspects, you have security aspects, and we have to be very careful about it.
The Netherlands is one country where there's strong public support for banning the burqa, at least in some cases.
We will have a law on wearing the veil in education, for instance, where communications is very important. So in that situation it's justified to have a prohibition on wearing face covering clothes. Well, a general prohibition, I think we will not have that kind of legislation.
It's not easy to balance free religious expression with other concerns, but lawmakers are trying their best.
It's also reassuring to see that MEPs as a group are open to this issue. They're willing to listen to isolated voices and to show that what we are saying is being heard by a group representing different European countries and citizens.
Whether to take action against the burqa or not remains a subject of debate, something the EPP Group doesn't have a position on, but is seeking better understanding.
Mrs. Wortmann-Kool, your country, the Netherlands, is stopping short of banning the burqa outright. Why?
Freedom of religion is a fundamental principle for the EPP. The discussion is more about face covering clothes, and that is really a problem. When it's about security, then you have to see the faces. Or for instance, for small children in education, they have to see their teachers. So these kind of problems we want to touch on, and not on the freedom of religion.
Corrine Wortmann-Kool, EPP Group Vice President, thank you very much for joining us. That's it for now on People First. To find out more about our group's activities on these and other issues, please check out our website at eppgroup.eu. Until next time, thank you for watching.